Good morning, my fellow SAP students. What I wanted to talk to you about today was client consulting in SAP, because basically what the SAP consultant is going to do is he's going to go to a client. The client will have an existing accounting package or package in place, and we'll say for the purposes of this example, Sage. And Sage might only give 500 functions, and he's going to want to move over to SAP because SAP may have like 2,500 functions. And what the consultant has to do is they have to convert the accounting system from SAP to SAP, and they have to convert it from the existing 500 functions to the new 2,500 functions. And the difference between the two is 2,000 functions, and that 2,000 functions is what is called the gap fit, which is what we discussed in previous videos. I wanted to give you another diagram of exactly how this is laid out from a schematic point of view. So you've got the client. It could be any large company, because really large companies are going to be the ones that are going to want to use SAP, because SAP is an expensive software package to use. So companies pretty much have to be large to be able to afford it. But the reason why companies go for SAP is because it's standardized, it's the industry standard, and also SAP will modify the system for them. SAP will put on as many modules onto the system as they like. There are 64 modules. Most companies, once they get SAP, they actually modify SAP to suit their needs. So very few companies use the IDES. That's the standard, or the standard SAP. They normally modify it, and some companies have modified SAP so much that if you actually went to use SAP, you might not even know that you were using SAP because it had been modified so much. So the client's going to be a big company. It could be something like GlaxoSmithKline or something like that. And then so what is going to happen is the business analyst is going to be the interface between the large company and the company that is supplying SAP. Okay, so business analyst might not necessarily work for SAP. He might work for another company such as IBM, which is interesting because SAP was started by 5 former engineers who worked for IBM, and now IBM is actually working for SAP. So that's an interesting turn of events. So the business analyst is the liaison between the company supplying SAP, such as IBM, and the client. And then the business analyst goes through the business process with the client. Now, during this business process, you have something called high-level design and low-level design, and those are going to be actually people who actually program in SAP. And then they're also going to be connected with someone called an SME expert. That's a small, medium enterprise expert. And they're another liaison that has to work on this SAP project to convert the project from one accounting system or one system to another system. And then basically what happens is it's a very big effort. It can take a couple of years to convert from one package to another package. And what has to happen is, obviously, you have like a blueprint. The business analyst and the project manager, what they will do is they will present the client with a business blueprint. And I've seen business blueprints, and it's just like A4 sheets of paper that say what they're going to do on the system, and it gives all the different parameters. Sometimes the blueprints will actually give the transaction codes that they're going to use to initiate this cutover. but nevertheless the client has to sign off on the documentation to say that they agree to it. And that documentation is your business blueprint. So once the client has signed off on the business blueprint, then what happens is you have your development server, which has got your software development SDLC, software development life cycle. And the consultant or the consulting team is going to be working on the software development lifecycle. That's all going to be done on the ING screen of your SAP. And then after you have your software development lifecycle, then it goes to your software development testing cycle, and the client is responsible for testing the data. And that is done through the SAP Easy Access screen, which I have actually discussed in an earlier video. Now, if the data fails, if the test fails, then what happens is this failed test goes back to the consulting team, and the consulting has to work on it to get it work, and then it will go back to the test server to test it again until it passes. And then when the testing passes, then what happens is it will go over to the production server, and so the client can actually use the SAP system. And again, that's done in your SAP Easy Access screen. The thing that you need to know is the consultant works on the SAP ING screen, but the client works, or the end user works, on the SAP Easy Access screen. So with the software development, that's the responsibility of the consultant. The testing is the responsibility of the client or the end user, and the workflow is the responsibility of the client or the end user. Well, I think that pretty much covers it for this presentation on client consulting, and I hope that you got some benefit out of it. Goodbye.